Hello everyone, my name is Dakoba and welcome back to Satisfactory. We are here at our computer factory and it has been churning away producing computers for us, which is exciting because that is one of the major components that we need in this phase. And today we're going to be taking on the next major component, which is heavy modular frames. Now, heavy modular frames, like computers, are built in a manufacturer. So let's slap one down and take a look at that recipe. Requires modular frames, steel pipes, encased industrial beams, and screws. Now, this is quite a daunting recipe, and if you've ever seen a heavy modular frame factory, they can really grow out of scale very, very quickly. We're going to tone things down a little bit and create a nice, simple one that will provide the heavy modular frames we need for our own personal use, and that will allow us to do something important. Now in the hub, we have one more technology available to us this tier, and that is the Mark II Blueprint Designer. That will let us create a 5x5 blueprint. We want this for a number of reasons, to build our roads, for example, but we also want this to allow us to create more complex modular factories. Things like computers and heavy modular frames are pretty hard to squeeze into the 4x4 Blueprint Designer, but are much easier to build nicely in the 5x5. So we're going to build a small factory by hand that will allow us to create enough heavy modular frames for us to use to unlock that milestone, as well as to build a nice stockpile for us to build with for things like building the Blueprint Designer itself, for example, and that will continue to sort of build up a nice stockpile as we go throughout the game. And then whenever we need heavy modular frames in additional factories later on, we'll be able to use the blueprints to quickly drop those into place. So in order to do this, we're going to start by taking a look at some alternate recipes. Now, we've been doing hard drive research for a long time, and there are several recipes that are going to be really helpful for us here. And so let's take a look at these. Each of these recipes is going to be based around trying to make the production of heavy modular frames simpler or more efficient so that we can work together with them. And one of these is this heavy encased frame. Now, what this does is it replaces screws with concrete. But importantly, if you notice, we already need the encased industrial beam, and we already have the encased industrial pipe recipe, which means if we have concrete and steel pipes on site already, then we'll be able to use those for the heavy modular frames themselves. We'll also be able to use them to create the encased industrial beams that are part of those. So we can sort of simplify our production chains tremendously by taking this recipe. So let's go ahead and grab that and take a look at what else we have. And there is another one I think we want in here. Let's see if we can find it. Maybe it was near the top. Ah, yes, there it is, the steeled frame. So in addition to the concrete, the pipes, and the encased industrial pipes, the other thing we need is the modular frames. And the steeled frame recipe will allow us to use the pipes directly as well. So we can sort of simplify the number of different components that we're producing instead of requiring iron rods there. So instead of having, sort of 4 different production lines in our iron section, we'll only need 3, and we can combine belt lines in order to simplify logistics there. This may also be more iron efficient because it produces 3 frames from 2 reinforced iron plates instead of the default recipe, which produces 2 frames from 3 reinforced iron plates. So even though the steel pipes are more expensive than the iron rods, I think this may still be more iron efficient. So we're going to go ahead and take steeled frame. Now, the other thing is that the iron pipes, or that the steel pipes, we can actually produce with our iron pipe alternate, which we had also previously unlocked. So once we have that one, then we'll be able to do this. So let's go ahead and select this reward. Now, I was tempted here to take the basic iron ingot because we're working with the iron ore and limestone already. So if we could make our iron stretch further, we would be able to do more frames. But I think the steeled frame is going to work better for us in this case. Ah, yes. And the last one we're going to be using is the stitched iron plate. Now, the stitched iron plate is a tremendous recipe, and it's one that we just didn't see early on, or I would have picked it up much sooner, because it's the best way to make reinforced iron plates out of wire if you have the iron wire alternate, which we do, or out of iron. So it allows you to make reinforced iron plates more efficiently than the defaults, and replaces screws with wire. And so this is just a really solid recipe. It's, like I said, it's an efficiency upgrade. It uses less materials and produces faster than the default. So we're going to go ahead and pick that one up as well. So now that we have those, let's go ahead and figure out where we want to build this thing and take a look at a design. All right, we are here right outside of the computer factory, and I've decided we're actually going to be building our heavy modular frame factory right here. I thought about doing it up in those hills. There's some nice iron and concrete up there, and as well as over there. Yeah, right behind that stand of trees, there's a nice spot with iron and concrete. So I thought about each of those locations, but I decided that with the design I've come up with, this is a perfect location. We have a limestone vein right there, and then just on the other side here, we have two normal iron veins. Now, the design that we're going to be using will require 360 iron ore and 144 limestone. Now, we have Mark II miners with normal veins that'll provide 120, so we'll have to overclock those. We'll use 3 power shards, 1 in each miner, to produce 180 out of our 2 iron veins, for a total of 360, and then 144 limestone. Next, we'll be sending the iron and concrete forward. The iron is going to go into 3 different production lines using a total of 7 constructors. 4 of those constructors will be producing steel pipe, 2 will be producing iron wire, and 1 will be producing iron plates. Now, some of those pipes will pair with some of the concrete in an assembler to produce our encased beams using the encased industrial pipe alternate recipe. Some of the steel pipes will send on forward to our final manufacturing step, and some we will send into our final production line. Now, the wire and plate are part of that final production line. Those will be combined to produce 3.56 reinforced iron plates with the stitched iron plate alternate recipe. And then those stitched plates, as well as the steel pipes, will be combined to produce 5.33 modular frames per minute. We will take those modular frames, our remaining pipes, our encased beams, and our concrete, and send those into a manufacturer to produce 2 heavy modular frames per minute. So once again, the alternate recipes that we're using here are the iron wire and iron pipe alternates. That allows us to make the make wire and steel pipes out of just iron, which makes this a pure iron factory, which is great, or pure iron and limestone. We're also using the steeled frame alternate, the stitched iron plate alternate, the encased industrial pipe alternate, which allows us to do the encased industrial beams out of the pipes, and then the heavy encased frame, which allows all of these components to sort of flow nicely into our final product here. So with that out of the way, I've chosen this location here. We're just going to be extending this platform out. I'm going to start with a 10 by 10 grid square there, and may extend that as needed for the build. But let's go ahead and get into it. All right, and that is a heavy modular frame factory all complete. I'm not in love with this building design entirely, but it's a start, and we'll continue to play around with it I tried to stick with a similar theme to what we did next door, so that we have sort of a unified appearance here. But I did want to do the sort of the classic slanted roof with the windowed walls to let in light. Let's go ahead and switch it over to daytime to see how that light coming in looks inside the factory, because it's pretty dark in there. But I've been struggling with the lighting. You can see I've tried to do some of the lighting with the signs, and it still doesn't seem to be working. I found a post on the QA site that said that they fixed it, but doesn't seem to fix it for me. So we're still struggling with the lighting there. I did end up putting in a couple of the big floodlights in order to make things a little bit better, particularly over here where the storage container and door are. But you can see the factory here. Now, I have not tuned these machines yet, so let's go ahead and do that. Let me pull up my notes here. We can go ahead and get these machines tuned. So this machine needs to be running at 72% clock speed. That should produce 2 per minute. We can set that to 2. There we go. And then our steeled frame constructor here. We are going to need to pull some of our power shards out of our inventory, because this one is going to need to run at 1.78% or 178% speed to produce 5.33 per minute. So we can just do 5.33 repeating. There we go. And then our stitched iron plate, we will actually underclock to 64% to produce the 3.56 units. 3.56 units per minute. And then let's see, our other assembler, we also need to overclock. So that's this one here. So this one we will set to produce a grand total of 6.67 units per minute. And see, I've already overclocked the miners. I did that right from the start. Our constructors all will need to do some underclocking on. So one of our pipe constructors needs to be set to 28% clock speed. Easy enough. Our plate constructor can be set to 60% clock speed. And one of our wiring constructors needs to be set to 6% clock speed. All right. And so with that, this should now be perfectly efficient, or it should become perfectly efficient as we get there. Everything else is perfectly tuned. It uses exactly 360 iron ingots per minute, or rather it uses 359.998 iron ingots per minute. I'm wondering if there's a rounding error there, but in theory, that should mean that once all of these machines are fully backlogged and all the manifolds are satisfied, that 12 smelters should provide exactly the correct number of iron ingots, and we should be providing exactly the correct amount of ore. So I think we're just waiting for various production steps to catch up inside. But at that point, everything should be perfectly tuned. Oh, there's one more thing. One of our constructors over here, we need a total of 48 limestone or concrete per minute. We're producing 15 times 3. So we'll kick one of these up to 18. And there we go. So 5 power shards within the factory itself, plus 3 more for the miners. And we are set on this factory. Now this is producing 2 heavy modular frames per minute. And let's see. I've not looked at the manufacturer. Is that... Does it show the item being produced? Or is that just the... Okay. It's just the decoration. But we are producing the 2 heavy modular frames per minute. And if we... This is going into a storage container, which is empty because our dimensional depot hasn't filled. But if we take a look, we are up to 63 heavy modular frames per minute. The vast majority of that is from the time I was spending decorating the building. And again, that is a work in progress. I may spend some more time over here decorating. I want to put some signs up, potentially put some catwalks in to allow a little easier access across the factory floor. But overall, this is a factory that functionally is finished. We're not going to be modifying the design internally or the production design at all. So now that we have those heavily modular frames in place, we need to let this run for a little bit in order to build up a stockpile, because we need 100 in order to unlock our next milestone. So Let's go ahead and let this run, and I'll keep working on the lights and the signs and some other things in here. And then I will see you guys at the hub in just a few minutes. All right, we have made it back to our hub. So let's go ahead and take a look at this milestone. This is the last sort of major milestone. We do want to do the pipeline engineering Mark II. That will also require the heavy modular frames. That's the only reason we hadn't done that. So that's something we'll be able to unlock soon. Use the Mark II pipelines. Now, we aren't using any builds that use these yet, but we may want that when we take a look at our space elevator components for this tier. So let's go ahead and select this milestone and see what we need in order to complete it. Looks like we need a couple stacks of rubber, a stack of concrete, and 2 stacks of heavy modular frames. So let's go ahead and see what we have. We don't quite have 2 stacks of heavy modular frames, but we do have enough. We needed some concrete, so we'll pull a stack of that out. And we needed some rubber. 2 stacks of rubber. Let's go ahead and get those loaded up.
Milestone reached. The Blueprint Mark II improves upon the Mark I in every dimension, except for the metaphysical ones. This improvement was made available due to complaints from pioneers about other pioneers not being capable of managing their space efficiently. We listen to pioneers, always.
All right, now let's go ahead and see what that's going to require. So that's going to require a few more heavy modular frames, so we might have to wait a minute to get that set up. That's okay. Let's go ahead and set up a platform for it. And I think we could either, let's start by just extending this out in this direction a little bit for now. I think a 7x7 should probably about do it. And so I will get this set up, and so let's go ahead and get this designer set up and see what we can build with it. There's a lot of blueprints that I want to build. In particular, I want to start working on road and railroad built blueprints so that we can really dig into sort of advanced long-range logistics around the desert. And then I also want to start doing some more modular factories. So this here is an example of a plastic. I think this was a plastic one that I made. So it takes crude oil, produces plastic and power, and yeah, it takes crude and water and then produces plastic and power. And so again, an interesting little sort of component factory, but some designs like heavy modular frames are quite difficult to do within a 4x4, and so that is why this that is one of the reasons why the 5x5 is going to be so nice. So let's go ahead and see what we can come up with for a proof of concept for heavy modular frame, just real quick. All right, so I have been messing around a little bit, and just by means of demonstration, I have come up with a heavy modular frame blueprint that fits in this 5x5 constructor, or platform, very easily, very nicely, and relatively cleanly. It's not quite finished. We need to set up our iron splitters up here. So 1, 2, and 3. These are producing iron. Oh, not like that though. And we will use a lift. Process our iron there. And then we need one coming down here. And I haven't set up power yet either. But the idea is that we send in concrete through this lift, and we send iron ingots through that lift. And if we do that correctly, then everything else is set up to produce 1 heavy modular frame per minute. Now, this is not the cleanest factory I've ever built, but it is all right angles, and there's no clipping, and so that's something. And it works. Importantly, it satisfies the needs of the design, and everything would function nicely. So this is something that we will probably save to refine a little later. I want to clean it up a little bit before I use it, but this is the idea that we're going to be using. It's the reason we can do a small factory for our own personal stockpile of heavy modular frames. Because if we take a look, even just in the time I've built this, I've already built up 27 more, which means I could build, nearly 50 more. I could build almost 5 more of these blueprint designers, and those are the only things that use the heavy modular frames at this time. Now, when we get into building something that's going to make use of those heavy modular frames, and we can actually take a quick glance, see. And now when it comes time to use those heavy modular frames for something, say the adaptive control units, we only need 1 per minute, and we can sort of take that blueprint we built and drop that in there. We don't need to draw from the stockpile that we're building for our own personal construction. We can instead drop in a blueprint for the heavy modular frames, and drop in a blueprint for the computers, and drop in a blueprint for the circuit boards, and drop in potentially a blueprint for the automated wiring. And that will allow us to very quickly expand and construct that factory. So that is what we are going to be doing here, is setting up some of those blueprints for some of these factories that we've already built and worked through a design on, and just figuring out how we can set them into a tileable, stackable way that'll let us build these space elevator components a little more easily. And I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. I would like to thank you guys for spending a few minutes with me here in the world of Satisfactory. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Leave a like if you have, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. My name is Dakoba, and I hope you have an efficient day. I will see you soon.